And in 1986, I was in a triathlon in Palm Springs, California, and I was on the biking portion of the race. And I was coming up to a corner, and I was passing two cyclists on the corner. And there was a police officer that was waving me on to make the turn. But he had his back to the oncoming traffic behind him. So as I passed these two bikers, a four-wheel drive vehicle going about 55 miles an hour hit me from behind on my bike and catapulted me out of my bike. And I landed squarely on my back. And when you land with that kind of force, the compression compresses the vertebrae in the spine. And so I wound up breaking 6 vertebrae in my spine, T8, T9, T10, T11, T12, and L1. And when I was laying there, I realized that it was pretty serious because I had a immediate physical change in my body, and I could feel the blood kind of pooling in my lungs. And so the neural arch of the 8th thoracic vertebrae was broken like a pretzel, and the volume of each vertebrae when it compresses goes somewhere, and it went back onto my spinal cord. So I had multiple compression fractures of my thoracic spine and upper lumbar spine. I had bone fragments on my cord, and I had the neural arch of T8 broken like a pretzel. And the typical treatment for this, after 4 opinions from 4 of the leading surgeons in Southern California, was this surgery called Harrington rod surgery. And they basically cut off the back parts of your vertebrae, and in my case it would be from the base of my neck to the base of my spine. And they drill in these stainless steel rods in an attempt to cantilever the spinal column off the spinal cord. And then they take bone fragments from your hip and they paste it over the top, and they hope for the best. And so the prognosis was, if I didn't get the surgery, I'd probably never walk again. And I think if it was anybody else, I saw those films and saw the radiographs and CAT scans, I probably, if it was somebody else, probably would have made that recommendation, but this was me. And I wasn't so quick to make that decision. And in 1986, it wasn't a good idea at the time to challenge your doctor. Well, there's a little bit more of an awareness around it, but in 1986, they thought I had hit my head. They thought I had post-traumatic stress disorder. They just couldn't understand that I wasn't so quick to sign on the dotted line. Anyway, I decided not to have the surgery, and I just had this thought, the power that made the body heals the body, and that's just how it happened. I think it was, part of my training and my understanding that there's an intelligence that gives us life, that keeps our heart beating and digesting our food. And when done properly, not only does it reduce pain and increase mobility, but a lot of times certain nerves that go to certain organs and tissues are released, and you have a pretty big change. So I was taking this to another level, and I studied yoga for years. I had my own yoga studio at the time, and I just believe that there's something within us that I could make contact with, that if I wasn't going anywhere, I wasn't doing anything, I was basically laying face down. And so I just said, look, I'm going to make contact with this intelligence, and I'm going to give it a plan. I'm going to give it a template. I'm going to design something. When I'm really complete with the design, I'm going to surrender my design to this greater mind and let it do the healing for me. Certainly I can't do it, but it probably knows how. And the other thing I thought was, I'm not going to let any thought slip by my awareness that I don't want to experience. And that sounds really easy from a philosophical standpoint, but when you're in crisis or trauma, or you're in a tough situation, I think we always focus on what we don't want to have happen instead of what we do want to have happen. So this was my challenge. It was 6 weeks of the dark night of the soul, because I realized I couldn't get my mind to do what I wanted it to do. Well, I wanted to reconstruct every single vertebrae. Like, I wanted to be present and show this intelligence exactly what I wanted. So I'd start off reconstructing the vertebrae, and then the next thing you know, I'd start thinking about, am I going to be in a wheelchair in a few months? Should I sell my home? Should I sell my practice? My mind was all over the place. And the hormones of stress actually do this to us, because when we're under the gun of the fight or flight nervous system, or the hormones of stress, out of the infinite potentials that we could put our attention on, we always select the worst case scenario, because living in stress is living in survival. So in survival, you prepare for the worst, because if you prepare for the worst and something less happens, you have a better chance of surviving. So 6 or 7 weeks, it would take me hours. Like when I say hours, because every time I would lose my attention, I'd start all over again. I'd say, that's not a complete picture. And what I didn't know that I was doing at the time, Maria, was that I was increasing my ability to be present and increasing my ability to stay focused. And I was firing and wiring a whole new set of neurons in the brain and creating a whole new level of mind. Anyway, at 6 weeks, somewhere between 6 and 7 weeks, it was like I hit a tennis ball right in the sweet spot, like I hit a golf ball just right. Something clicked in that moment. And from that point on, 2 things happened. It got a lot easier to do. What took me 2 or 3 hours to do, I was able to do in 45 minutes because I had installed the hardware. That's where my attention, my mind was. And secondly, you get to this point where it gets easy, and I started noticing my body. I started feeling back. My pain levels went down. I started to correlate what I was doing inside of me and the effects it was producing outside of me. And the moment that happened, I didn't dread doing it any longer. I was looking forward to it. And in 10.5 weeks, I was back on my feet. And they wanted to cast me for this full body cast, and they casted me for it. I wore it like maybe 10 minutes and just wasn't. I knew I was healed. The main surgeon from Scripps Hospital in San Diego, he was the Marcus Welby. He was the medical director of the hospital. He was, elderly man, salt and pepper hair, very credible, published. He was the one that gave me the most trouble, not most trouble, challenged me the most, and because he kept saying to me, if you were my son, you would be on the operating table right now. And I had great conversation with him. He said, this is not normal. This is, congratulations. I don't know that I would still advise my patients to do this because it's a great risk. But it really opened his mind. And I remember we had a pretty good relationship after that because he respected that there was a strong element that mind was involved. And that I just made a deal with myself. If I was ever able to walk again, I'd spend the rest of my life studying the mind-body connection and mind over matter, and doing that since 1986. I wanted to get beyond my body. I wanted to get beyond my pain, and I don't know. I trusted my intuition, I guess, more than anything else. I never have back pain. I mean, I don't have any back pain in my body. I don't have any pain in my body, and I'm actually grateful that it happened because I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you if it didn't. There was a moment after the 4th surgeon said to me, look, we don't have to put 12-inch stainless steel rods in your spine. We can put 8-inch stainless steel rods in your spine. We can leave them in for a year and then take them out and put 4-inch stainless steel rods in your spine. And I said to him, hey, doc, don't you think that would limit motion in my thoracic spine? And he said, what? You don't have any motion in your thoracic spine. Now, I was teaching martial arts and yoga at the time. I understand spinal biomechanics very well because of my training in chiropractic. And I just looked at him, and he was about 6'3" and probably 75 to 100 pounds overweight. And I just looked at him and I thought, my God, maybe you don't have any motion in your thoracic spine, but I have a hell of a lot more motion than you do. And then that was the moment I realized that my view was more vitalistic than mechanistic. It wasn't parts and broken things and pasting them and putting them back together, that there was an element of life force that I thought could assist in that healing. And to this day, I still believe that. I believe that it's not matter that is emitting a field. I think it's the field that creates matter. So when you change the field, you change matter, and the science behind that is very supportive. So my ability to articulate it, my research that I've done since then, and the studies that I've done in additional education has helped me to be able to put together a formula. And that formula, in this present time, is producing very dramatic changes in people's lives and their health.